Hello, everyone, and good evening. We have half an hour. And yes, I want to say, first of all, a huge thank you to the Art Gallery of New South Wales for inviting me to be here to share some of the insight into... Can you hear me? Yes, good. That's good, because sometimes I talk for half an hour and then it's like, can you, get closer to the microphone? So anyway, I'm very proud to have been invited here to talk to you all, especially with this incredible exhibition of masterpieces by Picasso. I was born in Barcelona, but not in Barcelona, actually, in a very, very small town called La Garriga. And I always loved dancing as a child, but there was no dance school in my town. So it wasn't until I was 15 that my parents were like fed up of me dancing in the streets and making my own steps and making my own dance, that they were able to take me to Barcelona to a teacher. And then the teacher said, oh yeah, I think he's got talent, his body seems to be doing the right things. And I discovered dance, and I never stopped since. I trained in Barcelona for 2 years, and then I moved to London at the age of 17, where I trained for another 2 years. And then at the age of 21, I joined Rambert, Ballet Rambert, which is one of England's most prestigious contemporary dance companies. I was there for 12 years, first as a dancer, but the whole thing of choreography and making dance was something that was always very present in my mind. I was always very intrigued about the dance making and how to, how I could become a choreographer. So I started making my first pieces with Rambert, and eventually, by the end of my career as a dancer, I became a resident choreographer for the company, and I made works for them. I then left Rambert when I was maybe, 28. It was 2004, I can't remember. But I funded my own dance company in London, and I was a resident artist at the South Bank Centre. Then I was invited to make a piece for Sydney Dance Company in 2008. And I was like, yeah, sure, it's a cool company. I've heard of it for many, many years. They have a great, great past and a great reputation. So I was very pleased to be here then, and that's when it all happened. Suddenly they needed a director. I thought about it for a little bit. I did an interview, and I was given this incredible opportunity to create work for Sydney Dance Company. I was thinking about Picasso and what do we have in common, and I thought, well, we're both bald. We're both quite short, and I didn't know he married a ballerina, so that's great. I knew he'd made designs for dance, and we're also both Spanish, although everyone thinks I'm Italian, and not everyone, but a lot of people, and a lot of people think that he's French, but we're not. And we both also spent a lot of time outside from our, the country where we were born. Literally all my career as a dancer, as a choreographer, it's been outside. That's what happens with dance. You never know where you're going to end. But going back, we know that Picasso collaborated with the Ballet Russe. It's something that in dance has happened a lot through the years. Also, Merce Cunningham, the late Merce Cunningham, who is an American choreographer, had sets done by Andy Warhol, by Rauschenberg, and an endless list of artists. And that was something that me, when I was a dancer and I wanted to choreograph, it always fascinated me that how could you, get into someone else's world, like could be, a painting or a sculpture or film or whatever it was, the medium that you wanted to use, and bring it into your world to be able to communicate to an audience more effectively, and also to be able to make that experience for the audience, more inspiring and richer. So I'm going to talk about 5 minutes only. God, I better breathe for a little bit. I always thought that dance actually was one of the most collaborative art forms, because we have costumes, we have set, we have the music. We also sometimes have dramaturgs. I have never myself worked with a dramaturg, but you have set designers, you have lighting designers, and it's the work of everyone together that makes the choreography. It's not just the steps. What I spend my life doing with the dancers every day, if it's the collaboration of all the elements that make dance such an event, and make them, the event of sitting in a theater and watching the performance so memorable for me. I have a funny, it's funny now, it wasn't funny then, a story about my first ever collaboration. I was commissioned by Rambert, which was the company in London that I was working with, and it was a work that was going to be performed at the Opera House in the Limbury Theatre, and I decided to collaborate with a Spanish artist, a painter, paint/sculpture called Ángela de la Cruz. And I had met her in London. I had been to see one of her exhibitions. She was Spanish, so we started talking, and I found her work very, very beautiful and powerful. So off we went into a collaboration, and she made these huge canvases that were on stage, sharing the stage with the dancers. And they were called Loose Feet. That was the title of the work. And I remember that one of the reviews, that one of the writers from the newspaper that saw the work thought that the dance was awful for a start, and it was one of my first works, so I was like devastated, like, oh my god, am I gonna ever make it? Am I ever gonna be a choreographer? And also described the paintings as big black bin liners, like a rubbish bin, like two big rubbish bins on stage, and not very good dance. Even the paintings wanted to leave the stage. And that was my first collaboration. So I have survived. I am here now. Ángela de la Cruz, actually, who's the artist, was last year one of the 4 finalists in the Turner Prize in London, which is one of the most prestigious visual artist prize that you could ever get. One of the biggest in the world, and definitely in England. And I haven't done quite well. I have done quite well myself. So I was very, very pleased that I never listened to that review. But that was my first ever collaboration. That never stopped me from wanting to collaborate and from wanting to work with other artists. Then I went through other collaborations with different artists, but the ones that I wanted to share with you this evening was about the 2 that have happened here in Australia. 2 of the works that I have actually made for Cine Dance Company. Maybe some of them you've seen, maybe you haven't seen, but I'll talk a little bit about it. And of course, I'm not so much going to be able to talk about the works themselves, but about the collaborative art aspects of the works. One of them was We Unfold. We Unfold is the first work that I choreographed for Cine Dance Company after my appointment as artistic director. It's a work that has been toured internationally and also across Australia. I think we have done 60 performances, someone told me today, just to share that fact with all of you. It was also my first symphony. The first time I was going to choreograph to a symphonic piece of music. I was in London. I had just been told that I got this gig with Cine Dance Company. I was going to move to Australia in 2 weeks, and I didn't know that, and I had to pack all my things and put them in a storage and move to Australia. And I was working with a composer, Ezio Bosso. He's Italian, living in London, and I said to him, I'm moving to Australia. I have to make a piece next month. I don't have anything, because I didn't know if I was going to get this job. And he said to me, oh, I've just finished composing my first symphony. I was like, oh, that sounds great. It's scary, and a symphony is huge. I was like, how many musicians? He's like, 80. I was like, oh, God. But, it's a big company. I have 16 dancers. So if I'm ever going to adventure into something so big, I should do it now, and I should be, brave and not be scared. So off we went, and I said yes. He actually, it was so new that it hadn't even been recorded. So I came to Australia and I said, oh, we've got to find money to record the symphony, because that's going to be my first work for Cine Dance Company, and I think it's a beautiful piece of music. He showed me, I listened to some of the recordings of what's a simulation. It's what you do with the computer that's going to sound like the music, and it never sounds like the music, but it gives you enough flavor to make decisions. And he was recording in Italy. I then moved to Australia, and I decided that I was going to work with Australian creatives, that I was here in a new journey. Of course, not everyone, because Ezio was Italian, but that I would, for the design of the work, for whatever else was going to be part of the work, I wanted to find people that were from here. And I was looking and asking people, and I came across a film by Daniel Askill, who is from Sydney and lives between Sydney and New York, and he's a filmmaker. He's had solo exhibitions that I have been here in Sydney to see of his work as photographer and also filmmaker. He also works very much with pop artists, doing video work for them, and also with advertising. So his range is incredible. But what I saw of him was a short film. And the short film was titled "We Have Decided Not to Die." And it was a film that was very abstract. It was very powerful, and it was very slow moving. And for me, it was like an incredible, I really connected to the visual poetry that he was trying to, to portray with the film. There was elements of water, of fire, and there was also humans like the figure, let's say, a human figure, but not really a narrative. It was more of a visual narrative. And I suddenly clicked that maybe this could be something that could work. I mean, you never know. That's the thing with collaboration. Also, you like the work of someone, or you admire the work of an artist and you want to work with them, and then you meet them and you never know what's going to happen, but you have to take the risk. But for me, it's always like, if I respect the work of the artist, if I already like the language of the artist, if I feel inspired by what they do, then that's already a good starting point. Then I will always have a coffee. If we can have a coffee and we can talk, because no matter how good someone is, if I can't talk to them, if we can't understand each other, then there's no point, because nothing's ever going to go anywhere. And that's happened to me. So you learn through hard experiences. You can't just go with something that you like for the sake of liking it. You have to be able to find points of connection. So we had a coffee, and then the second test is a dinner or lunch. And then if you can be for a whole hour, and then you talk more about the work itself. So yes, I decided to work with Daniel. And from that point, I don't know, I'm talking here about my way. I never know what other way, how Picasso did it with Ballet Russe, and how he got to the point that he got to make the work that he made for them. But for me, I said to Daniel, let's listen to the music together. And also would like you to listen to the music yourself and see what the music brings to you. Because if I want to work with you, it's not just because I want to tell you what to do. Because if I'm like, oh, I want a red background with, blue lines going up and down and da-da-da, then I might as well just get someone to do something for me. For me, collaboration is about someone else also bringing something to me as a person and as an artist, and to the work, ultimately, that's going to to be wonderful. That's what you expect. So I listen to the music. I also, and I won't go into detail with all of that, but the symphony was in 5 sections, and every section had its themes that I spoke a lot about with Ezio, which was the composer. So in London, I had a lot of conversations with the composer about what his thoughts were behind each section of the music. And the beautiful thing, actually, I remember now, was that the music was titled Oceans 1. And it was obviously inspired in the oceans. And everything that the oceans could mean metaphorically, not just the oceans as water and the sea, but how powerful, how destructive, but how also they can unite people. And I thought it was perfect, because I thought, oh, I've been a few times in Australia. There's such a connection with the ocean. People here, everywhere, most people live around and close to the ocean. Everyone swims amazingly. I'm always like, or surfs, or it's such an important part of who you are and who we are here in this country. So I thought it was also a beautiful theme for me to explore. I was moving through the oceans. I was flying, but there was a time where people had to do it by boat to be able to get here, to get to a new life. And all of these thoughts behind the music, behind the work, I shared with Daniel, who was going to make a film for the work. He then also, shared with me what thoughts he had that the music brought to his head. So we was talking about stars and a star field and something going through stars. And for me, if I connect with that idea, if I relate with that idea, I'll be, yes, go ahead. The one thing that I've learned also is that when it's really out there in a way that I don't connect, it's better to be honest and to say, look, I don't get it. I don't know why you're talking about stars, because I'm not feeling the stars. And it's not like I'm being, I just think that that will hopefully bring us to the next stage of the development of collaborating, and then hopefully we'll get to a place together. So I have a little bit of writing here that I'm going to write for you. I'm not going to write it, I'm going to read it for you, which is what Daniel wrote in his words, which will explain more what the film was about. But he started with the idea of moving through a star field, the idea of a journey unfolding, a journey that would take us from the cosmos into a symbolic human narrative and back out into the stars. It is a simple, universal narrative that aims to work as a counterpoint to the choreography in terms of scale and speed. At its core are elements of fire, water, and the figure. Elements whose primitive powers have seduced me since I first started making videos in school. And the final result, no doubt, owes a subconscious step to some of the work I loved and admired growing up. Kubrick, Bill Viola, Star Wars, and Tarkovsky. Work that all deals in some way with these primitive, cosmic, and elemental forces that have mesmerized and informed art and ritual through the ages. So that was... You can't imagine it. It's very hard to imagine it, I know, and unless you've seen it before. But that was all the ideas that we came together for the film. There was the cosmos, there was fire, there was water, there was the human. We filmed everything we shot for the piece. So there is a female and a male figure, and there were two of the dancers. And we practically, took a day off out of the choreographic process, which always for the choreographer is like, I need that day. But we went into a studio here in Sydney and we recorded the figures, doing all the different actions that then happen in the film. And it has quite a lot of special effects, actually, to do with burning and with reversing actions that, feel like people are floating, but actually they're actually not. They're just jumping. And it was interesting for me also because as I had never worked with a filmmaker that was working in such a sophisticated way of speeds and cameras and ways of shooting. So for me as an artist, it was also very enriching. It was, if you're curious, and I think that's one of the things you have to have as a choreographer, curiosity will get you far. Because it's always about how to learn to do new things, how other people do new things, and how can that inform your own work. So I have to say that it was really, really interesting for me to be there in the studio and to see how Daniel was making everything work. I have to say that by the end it was a monumental and extraordinary piece of work that was at the back of the stage. The projection was through the whole hour of the work also. It was very powerful. And one of the things that was really interesting for us also, it was about the relationship of what was going on stage and then what was going to happen in the screen. That was the other level of collaborative process. And then it kept adding levels, but there was moments where I would say to, the third section was about the heart, and about the beating of the heart, and about how that can unite people. And it was about togetherness. And so I had this idea of a group that was in the middle of the stage, in two lines, and that the movements were very precise and very much like a heartbeat. And then he placed the figure at the back, right in the middle of the dance. So that was also something that we had to take into consideration at the time of placing his film, and me also at the time of choreographing. Although I never got to see the film in its full glory until we got to Sydney Theatre, I was, I would see it with him in a small TV, and then I would go back and make notes and go back to the studio and choreograph a little bit around what was going to happen in the screen. And that was actually, then the lights became the other thing, because the film and the projection was such a source of light and such an incredible, powerful source of light that to actually balance the next sort of how could you call it, like difficulty, and difficulties become, you know, a way of getting creative. You have to solve them. You have to find ways of solving them. Was actually how to balance the powerful screen and light with what was being, you know, projected on the stage with the dancers. And that was We Unfold. That was my first collaboration here in Australia. Also, the costumes actually were done by Jordan Askill, who is the brother of Daniel. And I didn't sort of, you know, make it because they were brothers. Actually, Jordan is a very, very talented designer, and I had met him in London in a pub, as you do. And then when I came to Australia, I realized he was the brother of, you know, one of those really funny coincidences, and they worked together a lot. So I thought it was, because I was here new, and I didn't know anyone, and I was already working with a new lighting designer, a new artist, I thought it would be good that Daniel and Jordan, who I already knew, also, you know, they already had a relationship, and that could, you know, could make everything smoother, and it did. The second work that I was going to talk about, it's Six Breaths, and that work was premiered last year in Sydney Theatre in 2010, in like April or something, and it's also been, we've just performed it last December in New York, London, and Barcelona. So finally my mother got to see what I've been doing in the last 3 years here in Sydney, and that was a great and great joy. And I, for Six Breaths, I decided to stay working with Ezio Bosso, who is the same composer that did We Unfold. So suddenly, okay, I met someone who was Ezio that I really connected with. And all yeah, I had been changing, like every work with a different composer, and I thought, oh God, I think we have a connection here that's worth sticking by. Of course, you know, you need to change eventually, but I thought that we were really growing together. And after We Unfold, we actually made another work, and then I said for Six Breaths, oh, I still want to work with you. And the first thing is, but we need an idea. You know, what's the work going to be about? And I'm always like, you know, will I ever run out of ideas? I hope not. Because they haven't made an application yet that gives you an idea for the next work. I'm waiting for it. You know, you shake it, you look at it, and it tells you what's going to be the next work. And I was Skyping him in from Sydney, and I was telling him that, and he said to me, look, I've been thinking a lot about breath. And I was like, oh, really? Like, why? And he's like, well, and the fact was that he just had an operation for a tumor in his stomach that was touching his lungs. So from not even thinking about breath, because we never think about breath, we just do it. It's something that happens. We go to sleep, we keep breathing, we get up, we breathe, we communicate, we're breathing, all that, we run, we're breathing. And it's such a vital and important thing of us, but it's there and we don't think about it. It also can calm us down. There's so many things that breath can do. And the reason why he thought about it was because of the illness and because of the operation. And I was like, wow, that's such a beautiful idea. Like, I started thinking in terms of movement and in terms of choreography. So for a while, we started, you know, sending emails of like out of breath, holding your breath, in the same breath, look, or different ways of and ideas of breathing. Oh, that's the 5-minute call. So I will cut right through into, we decided that it was going to be breath, and then I was working with Tim Richardson, who is an Australian filmmaker and photographer, and I was talking to him about breath and how I was going to make this piece about breath. And I wasn't going to have any film. You know, I was like, this time I'm just doing a dance with nothing else. And he said to me the day after, oh, I've had a great idea about a film. I was like, oh my God, I have no money. Like, I don't know where I'm going to, you know, like how we can make this happen. And he said, look, I had this idea of doing a 3D scan of 2 of the dancers. It was all, again, very Hollywood and special effects. So I was like, not quite understanding, but trying to get grips with what he was talking about. And then we will digitalize the information and, in a way, break down the 2 bodies of a female dancer and a male dancer in an embrace, and then we will make them as oxygen, as is these little particles, which are digitalized 3D projection that was in the performance, slowly becomes the male figure, and then it slowly becomes the female figure, and then they slowly resolve. And in a way, it's like life, you know, you're born and you have the first breath, and then at the end you become dust. And it was a beautiful collaboration through film again with another talented Australian artist that I did. But now I have to tell you about To One Another, because I only have 3 minutes, I think. And I would have loved to do questions and everything, but we'll have to do it another day. I am at the moment working in another collaboration. It's titled To One Another. Literally, I started last week. I'm collaborating with Tony Asnes, who is a designer that I worked with in 2008 when I first came here. And I'm also working with a poet. And that's what I wanted to share with you. I've never worked with a poet. I met this poet here, and he wrote this writing that I was very connected with. And I invited him to come to the studio and to see me work with the dancers and to just write whatever came to his head, because I wanted that poetry to be part of the score. So now, when I finish, I'm running to meet Nick Wiles, who is the composer involved in this project, who is also from Sydney, because we are working on these words, these poems, and how to include them into the music. And it's that point of panic, of like, oh God, is it going to work? Is it not going to work? Is this ridiculous? Is this not? And that's what you have to deal with as an artist every day, you know. But unless you take those chances and you go for it and you trial and error and, you know, and all of that, you never evolve. And I guess also it's about, you know, me being excited about what I do, and that makes me be excited about what I do, to connect with other artists that, you know, I invite to join and to come into my world, and then to, you know, to make hopefully inspiring dance works. To One Another, now I'm doing a marketing bit, yeah. To One Another will open in March, the 12th of March, so I don't have a lot of time, but I will make it, I promise. In the Sydney Theatre, and we actually, for all of you sitting here tonight, we have flyers with a discount. So, you know, if you don't like it, at least you got a discount. You know, like, I didn't like it, but I got a discount. You know, you can say, I didn't pay, because it's actually a discount for the best seats, like £10 discount. But also, what I wanted to tell you is that on the 6th of March, I will be doing a work in progress. And I will be talking a lot more in depth about the collaboration of To One Another, with the music and with the poet, and with there's also a screen, but it's not film. I won't tell you everything today, so that you still, you know, maybe come back to see it. It's been a pleasure, and until next time, I hope. Come and see us. Come and see.